Welcome to this webinar, which is number 10 in the Building Safety webinar series. Number 10 is the topic of the safety management system. I'm going to share my slides now. So I hope everybody can see the slides okay. So as you can see, this is presented by myself, Brian Cox, and the second part will be presented by Ben Blackwood, my colleague, and he will present a case study about a particular building. I just want to give this disclaimer that any opinions expressed in this presentation are my own and do not necessarily represent those of the IMechE or any other organisation. And this work is based on the many meetings and work we've done with the competence steering groups, working group 1, under the leadership of the Engineering Council. And it's a collaborative project between various organisations involved and shown on the first slide. So here is the whole series of webinars which we're doing on these topics. And as I said, this is number 10, Safety Management Systems. I recommend, if you haven't already, to watch number 1, the introduction, which will give you the overview of the whole process. And in number 1, we suggested this process for arriving at the safety case report, which is one of the documents you have to submit when you come to be invited to apply for the building assessment certificate. And as you can see, safety management system is number 6 in that process. So safety management systems are what you need if you are responsible for an occupied high-rise residential building. And here are the 2 kind of legal requirements. First of all, in the Building Safety Act itself, in which case it refers to arrangements for the purpose of ensuring effective planning, organisation, control, monitoring and review steps taken. And then the secondary legislation, the regulation called Management of Safety Risks, etc. in section 5 says that PAP must include the following information in a safety case report, and then a subsection of 5C says a description summarising the system for managing safety, and that is the safety management system. So in regard to building, there are 2 kinds of activity. First of all, of course, there is construction, both to build the building in the first place and probably to refurbish it or modify it later on. And then there's management, which is both management of the construction throughout its life, but also the operational management, which is the management for running the building when it is occupied and ensuring that it is safe. So here in this rather crowded diagram, we tried to show the job of the operational management task. So it's a series of tasks, and we've shown the task sources on the left. So they come from external consultants and contractors, for example, fire risk assessments, structural surveys. And then you will have a risk register, which you should have already compiled in a previous operation in this series. And then routine maintenance may well show up things that need to be done, or including ordering new materials, machinery, and so on. And then we have the various tasks which may come from the resident's voice, the resident's requests of various kinds, and also complaints to proceed in. And in the centre, we're trying to illustrate how you have all these tasks and you have to do a sort of triage and decide which ones are the highest priority and so on. And if you have multiple buildings under your management, then you have to consolidate all the different tasks from different buildings and then decide how you're going to do the priority. And then task resolution consists of managing your resources, both internal and external resources and materials, in order to get the task completed. Of course, this is a dynamic process and new tasks are coming in all the time. So we need to monitor this. And at the bottom, you'll see we have the continuous improvement management and using Plan, Do, Check, Act to do that. I'll come back to that later. So how do you manage all these things? Well, if you haven't got a management system really, then this is a suggested way of designing your safety management system. I think it's quite good because it can apply to both a large organization and to a small organization, down to perhaps you may have a single building which you're managing yourselves. And the top bit, the safety policy, is really about accountability and leadership. And I'll come back to all these in a minute. Safety risk management is really knowing what are the risks in your building, what are the hazards and how you control the risks. Safety assurance is checking your own performance, looking at management of change and continuous improvement. And then safety promotion is really training and education and communication, both to residents, to employees around the building, and so on. So we have a look at each of those in turn. This particular list I've taken from the civil aviation work, and I think it's quite a good one to start with if you don't have a safety management system already. So safety policy, as I said, this is about leadership, management commitment. So it's good if you have a safety champion, some senior person, and then safety accountabilities. That's appointing your PAP, your APs, and probably a responsible person as well, depending upon the construction of your building, whether you have multiple uses and so on. And then appointment of key safety personnel, that might be a building safety manager or whichever title you've given it in your organisation. And then coordination of emergency response planning is an important thing to be done. And then SMS documentation, safety policy manual. So safety risk management, we've talking about in another webinar about hazard identification and risk assessment and mitigation. This is very important and deserves a webinar to itself. But basically, you need to identify the hazards in your building. For example, do you have gas or not, and so on. And then at the bottom, we have mandatory reporting system. This is another requirement of the legal system now. That means if you have a major incident in your building, or whether or not it actually harms anybody, you have to report it to the building safety regulator. Safety assurance is performance monitoring and measurement. So it's really checking whether what you think is controlling your safety is actually working. Continuous improvement. Management of change is important. And competence management. So competence management, it might be helpful for you to read BSI PAS 8673, which is competence requirements for the management of safety in residential buildings. So the last one is safety promotion, which is training and education, safety communications, employee communication, of course, and mandatory occurrence reporting. So mandatory reporting requirements are part of the requirements of the building assessment certificate application. And just to give you a summary of what is needed for that certificate application, you need to submit a copy of the latest safety case report, which will include details of the safety management system, a copy of the resident engagement strategy, information on how the mandatory occurrence reporting system operates, and a statement confirming that everybody's been given the correct information and documents as appropriate. So if you're a big organization, it may well be that you already have another management system of some sort. So probably in the building management area, it probably could be ISO 45001, which is occupational health and safety. You might also have BS 9997, which is a fire safety management system. And you might have another one like quality control, which is ISO 9001. If you have these, then the ISO organization has planned to help you by making some of the parts of these different systems common, so that you can make them as efficient as possible. So if you go to ISO and you have these kind of several systems, you can have a look at their high-level integrated management system. So ISO have also suggested a structure which has been adopted also by the British standards. This is their structure, and if we look at this compared to the previous chart, you can see that it's got a lot of commonality, and in fact it does cover the same topics in slightly different headings. But the one which they have added on, which we didn't have before, is what's called the context of the organization. So the context of the organization is about how does your organization work? Do you own the buildings? How are the buildings managed? Who's responsible for the building? And so on. And then the needs and expectations of interested parties and stakeholders, what legal and regulatory requirements affect the building, the scope of the management system, and the management system itself. So here's the contents list from the Fire Safety Management System BS 9997. And you can see they use the ISO structure, and the headings are context of the organization, leadership, planning, support, performance evaluation and improvement. And it covers all the same topics under those ISO headings. So let's talk about Plan, Do, Check, Act. And this was originally associated with W. Edwards Deming, who was one of the original quality gurus, we used to call them. Deming actually said he thought it was a much older thing, but he liked to use it. So we call that PDCA. So here's a little example of fire door replacement problem. A regular fire risk assessment listed a number of fire doors needing replacement because they went up to scratch. And the job was given top priority and contractor appointed, but subsequent task metric analysis showed that the task resolution took a really long time to complete. So we looked at the root cause. So we find the contractor was not competent. I say that because he didn't recognise that the replacement doors he ordered were also non-compliant. And the resupply of a second lot of doors which were compliant with the regulations caused a long delay. So the root cause was the contractor competence checking policy proved inadequate. And the high-level issue is competence checking procedures for all on-site personnel need to be reviewed. So here's your Plan, Do, Check, Act. So plan is a new competence policy to be approved. Do, issue the new policy and brief affected staff. Check, carry out, check that the policy is being followed. And act is set a review date and redefine the policy if necessary. So you can also use a PDCA improvement cycle for the complete management system. So in this case, we're looking at plan for design the system, do for display the system, check for review the system, and act for improve the system. I'm indebted to Ian Aldridge here for this chart, which just shows PDCA versus the ISO structure. And HSE's model for an SMS is based on the Plan, Do, Check, Act approach, and they do it slightly differently in this case. So the plan is determine the policy and plan for implementation, all in plan, which we would have put slightly different, profile risks and implement your plan, measure performance, review performance and act on lessons learned. So I think if you're starting from the beginning, this is slightly confusing. So I suggest that you go to HSE's Managing for Health and Safety, which I think is a bit clearer, and says basically if you're starting from scratch, then you probably need to go around the cycle more than once. And that's really what we need to do. So cycle one is our applying PDCA to the complete system. That is, plan your SMS, deploy it, check it works, plan for improvement. Sorry, I've jumped aside there. And then in cycle 2, you plan, do, check, act to improve the system, and so it goes on. So you can do these cycles multiple times according to what's happening. So continuous improvement, we want SMS to have a part of it is continuous improvement, and this can be to improve particular measures which are in place to manage the building, or the whole system itself and policies and procedures. For example, barrier maintenance. I hope you're familiar with barriers from carrying out bow tie analysis or something similar. So I like this system, which I've used in various manufacturing industry locations, called 7-step continuous improvement. And when it goes through, it says 1 is record the initial problem, 2 is clarify the problem, and number 3, which is often forgotten, is contain the problem. So basically that means if you find a problem in one place in one of your buildings or in one place in your building, it's very likely the same problem is somewhere else as well. So the job you have to do there is to find out where else it is. Now you know what to look for, and contain it. Make sure it's not getting any worse whilst you sort out a resolution. Then identify the root cause of the problem, define the corrective action, implement the corrective action, and monitor the implementation. So if we look at this little chart again, we've got all these tasks here, and very likely again that if, for example, a fire risk assessment or structural survey or something finds a particular task in one building, just think about, is that going to happen in another building as well, but maybe it didn't get picked up, or the fire risk assessment is for that building isn't due yet, but have a look, make sure, and contain the problem. So in terms of checking whether we have a continuously improving system or not, we need some measurements. And this is a kind of data flow chart that you can make your own according to your situation. So I put inspection reports, barrier maintenance, residence voice, plan maintenance are all things which will generate tasks, and then have resource management to sort them out, and task resolution. And each of those I put as having a metric. You might call that key performance indicator, KPI, same thing. And what we want to do is to put those on a scoreboard or something so that you can see how those metrics measure over time, and then where you think they might in need of improvement, design some improving process, then you can watch how they change. So this is continuous improvement. So here we have the little chart again with the 7 steps, but now we're applying the metrics. So the metrics are telling us about the problem, clarify the problem, contain the problem, and identify the root cause. And then we can see that we can apply the PDCA here, define the corrective action, implement the corrective action, monitor the implementation, and act on the result. So we've now got really to 8 steps. Emergency planning. This is something you need to be dealing with at the top level. So I'd say your safety champion needs to be involved in this so that it's well agreed throughout the organisation. There are a lot of things to do about emergency planning. There are the obvious things like having fire assembly points. You might want to have fire practice for some of the, if you have a fire monitor on each floor, for example. You want to know about your vulnerable residents, and you need to be aware of the fact that the fire services, with their best foot forward, is not going to arrive instantaneously. So a good fire service, which is not far away, might get there in 5 minutes. I think on the average, it's something like 8 minutes. So in that first period of time is very critical. When I was managing different buildings, I was often told by the local fire authority, what's happening in the first 10 minutes? You need to think about what's going to happen in the first 10 minutes. So are your people prepared? Do they know what to do when there's a fire? And fires can get out of hand very quickly. And after 10 minutes, a fire can be extremely dangerous and very difficult for the fires people to put out. So do think about the first 10 minutes. So this is courtesy of Croydon government, local government. This is an emergency planning example of a fire safety policy. You should have one of these. And that says what is the policy in this particular building, staying put or leaving the building. It says in particular that if you can see or smell fire or smoke, get your family out and shut the front door behind you. So you should have some kind of policy document like that. Management of change, well, we do all this work and then along comes the ownership of the building and says, well, we're going to refurbish this building next year. So then a lot of things are going to change. You might also have changes to the residence profile. For example, the residents are all getting much older and can't cope with suddenly rushing down the stairs and so on. They may not have, they may be deaf, for example. And then we have to think about organizational changes. It might be that your organization joins together with another organization and the overall organization has different policies. There can be changes to internal and external resources, both in people and materials and so on. And there can be external changes due to government regulations or other reasons. So who is responsible in your organization for monitoring change? And this is something I put in for you to discuss. I think it's quite an interesting topic. This is actually from the MOD safety case site. And it's about when you come to the end of having prepared your safety case report and other documents which you're going to submit to the building safety regulator, it's about review and sign off. So the PAP probably at the end is the one who authorizes the issue of the safety case report. In other words, he says this report may be issued and sent out to the building safety regulator. But on the way, you may have APs who have submitted parts of that document and they will endorse their own document, but they're definitely not going to authorize the whole thing. And then you may have some internal system which says any document like this, which is going outside, needs to be audited internally by other people. And that's the kind of assurance. So I think this is an interesting thing to think about when you're preparing documents for external submission. So thank you very much for listening to this webinar. I hope it's useful to you. You can find all the webinars on the IMechE site, and I look forward to hearing from you. If you want to contact me, you can do that through IMechE. Thank you very much for attending.